My name is Avery Sinclair, and I'm 32 years old. I'm the only daughter of the man who built Sinclair Innovations from the ground up. For over a decade, I stood beside him, learning, leading, and protecting the company like it was part of my own flesh and blood. But just days after his funeral, I realized something brutal. Not everyone saw me as the rightful heir. That was the moment my real story began, not just as a businesswoman, but as someone betrayed and ready to reclaim everything they tried to erase. The funeral wasn't even cold, and they were already erasing me. I stood in the lobby of Sinclair Innovations, blinking under the sterile glare of fluorescent lights. Just last week, my father's photo had hung behind the front desk, a portrait of legacy and quiet dominance. Today, it was gone, replaced by a blank wall and the silence of sanitized betrayal. I swiped my badge at the turnstile. Access denied. A second swipe. The same metallic buzz of rejection. I tried again, pressing the card with more force as if it were a matter of effort. "Ms. Sinclair?" The young man at reception glanced up, unsure. You're not on the active list anymore. I was told to call security if—" "You were told?" I snapped, my voice slicing the silence. "By whom?" He shrank back, mumbling something about executive directives, but I was already moving. I bypassed the turnstile, heels clicking against the marble, daring anyone to stop me. No one did. On the ride up to the executive floor, my chest burned. Not from the effort, but from the knowing. The kind of knowing that only comes when grief and betrayal arrive hand in hand. I had buried my father 3 days ago. 3 days. I hadn't even packed away the sympathy cards, and already they were gutting his legacy. And my place in it. The elevator chimed, and the doors parted to a space that felt wrong. Rearranged. Sanitized of me. "Look who decided to visit." Lila Quinn drawled from the hallway, arms crossed, eyes scanning me like I was an uninvited guest in my own house. "Shouldn't you be resting?" Tanner added, lips curled in mock concern. Grief can do wild things to the mind. Maybe some personal leave would help. I didn't answer. My gaze swept the hallway. The brass nameplate outside the boardroom no longer bore my name. The printed directory near the conference rooms listed every executive but me. My office, locked. Across the floor, the glass-walled boardroom buzzed with muffled voices. Through the frosted pane, I saw Celeste at the head of the table, poised like a queen surveying her domain. A few board members nodded at whatever she was presenting. I hadn't been invited. No agenda had been sent to me. No calendar notification. My seat was empty by design. Celeste didn't even look up as I stood outside the glass. She just spoke, calm and cool, as if my absence was perfectly ordinary. My pulse roared in my ears. I walked past the boardroom without knocking. Past Harrison Cole, who sat with his jaw tight and eyes downcast. Past Sienna Park, who met my gaze only for a moment, enough to register something unspoken, before she looked away. Inside my old office, I found the door still bore my initials, but the interior had been scrubbed, files gone. My mug, the one my father gave me with future CEO in gold letters, gone. On the desk sat a manila envelope. Inside, a printed internal memo. Subject: Strategic Reorganization. Q1 Transition Plan. Effective December 10th, select positions identified as overlapping or redundant will be phased out or transitioned. Departments impacted. Operations, strategic development. And there it was. My title, Chief Strategy Officer, listed beneath a bulleted item, redundant, to be restructured under executive direction. My breath caught. Redundant. After 15 years building this company at my father's side. After running merger negotiations, surviving market crashes, handling investor fallouts. Redundant. I stood there, memo in hand, fingers trembling. Not with sadness, but with rage so sharp it sliced through the grief like glass. I was being erased. Deliberately, methodically. Not fired, not demoted. Just phased out as if I'd never mattered. as if I were a temporary placeholder in a story they planned to rewrite. The office door creaked open. Sienna stepped in, quiet but urgent. Her eyes flicked to the envelope in my hand, then to my face. "Don't react," she said under her breath. "Just take this." She pressed a folded note into my palm and closed my fingers around it. Then she was gone, heels echoing down the corridor before I could ask what the hell was happening. I opened the note, heart thudding. "Meet me after hours. You need to see this." If they could, they'd scrub me out of the company records, and my father's will. The steam from my coffee curled toward the ceiling, catching the morning light like a whisper of something fragile. Truth, maybe? Or hope. But neither felt present here. Sienna sat across from me, her shoulders hunched, eyes darting toward the windows of the empty cafe. It was too early for the usual tech crowd and too cold for tourists. Just us, and the weight of something treacherous. "They're moving fast," she said, sliding a tablet across the table. On the screen was a draft of a press release, polished and prepped, bearing the company seal. Avery Sinclair to take extended personal leave to reflect and recharge after years of exemplary service. My mouth dried. Extended leave. So clean, so final, like sweeping dust under a silk rug. "I haven't approved this," I whispered. "They didn't ask," Sienna replied. "It's scheduled to go out Monday morning." The words blurred as I stared at the draft. Every line a surgical cut to sever me from public memory. Benevolent in tone, brutal in intent. "They're whitewashing you," she added, softer. "Not just from strategy meetings, from the whole narrative." I leaned back, the wooden chair groaning under me. "Why help me now?" Her jaw tightened. "Because I was loyal to your father. Because I owe him. And because what they're doing, it's not just political. It's personal." Outside, a delivery truck rumbled past, drowning our silence. I thought of Dad's voice, deep, deliberate, saying, "Power is silent until it needs to speak." He never shouted. He waited. And when he moved, the world noticed. I needed that silence now, and the precision that came with it. Back at Sinclair HQ, the glass-walled conference room was abuzz with noise. Lila stood at the whiteboard, gesturing wildly with her signature blend of flair and menace. Around her, junior execs nodded too quickly, their laughter forced. "Let's simplify the branding pipeline ahead of the next quarter," she said. "We're not married to old legacy models anymore." I stepped closer, unnoticed. "And Langston's team?" one intern asked. "They're aligned," she chirped. "Prelim files are in their hands." My stomach nodded. "Prelim files?" Lila turned just enough to catch sight of me and smiled. "Oh, Avery, didn't see you. Everything all right?" "Peachy," I said, stepping into the room. "Just wondering what confidential documents are circulating without board approval." She arched a brow. "Relax, it's just exploratory synergy." A wink. "You'll read the decks eventually." Tanner appeared beside her, phone in hand, smug as ever. "You know, this could be a new era for Sinclair," he said. "Streamlined, efficient, and less emotionally entangled." I stared at him. "You mean less tied to my father's vision?" He didn't flinch. "Vision evolves." That was when I saw him. Victor Langston, tall, lean, sharply tailored, exiting Celeste's office with a thin manila folder tucked beneath his arm. He wasn't just visiting. He was leaving satisfied. The way someone looks when signatures have been exchanged. He didn't notice me at first. Then our eyes met, and something flickered. Recognition, maybe. Amusement. He nodded. "Miss Sinclair." I didn't respond. When he disappeared into the elevator, I turned to the frosted glass of Celeste's office. The door was ajar. On her desk lay a pen still uncapped. A fresh signature shimmered faintly on a draft marked Langston Sinclair Merger, Preliminary Terms. My throat constricted. It was happening. Not just a hostile merger, but a rewrite of the empire my father built, a removal of bloodlines, a substitution of stories. That night, I returned to my father's study, the one untouched room in the Sinclair brownstone. Heavy walnut shelves loomed, and the scent of old paper clung to the air like memory. The antique clock on the mantel ticked slowly, each second a reminder that time could wound. I stood before it, hand trembling slightly, and whispered into the silence, "What did you hide from them, Dad?" Behind the false drawer, beneath layers of dust, was my father's final move. The antique clock loomed before me, its wooden frame scarred with age, the brass pendulum frozen mid-swing. I hadn't touched it in years. My father and I had restored it together once, when I was 16. Just us, a screwdriver, and too many cups of cocoa. He'd held my hand steady, saying, "Some things just need the right hands to work again." Now I needed his hands more than ever. I knelt down, fingers tracing along the curved base, remembering the way he had unscrewed the back panel and adjusted the internal gears. My heart pounded against my ribs as I pressed along the wood grain, searching for something. A faint click answered me. I leaned in. A small latch, nearly invisible, slid free under pressure. The false drawer creaked open an inch. Dust spiraled into the air like smoke from a long-dead fire. Inside sat a weathered leather envelope tied with dark green twine. My name was written across the front in his unmistakable hand. Avery. I swallowed hard and pulled it free. I broke the seal with trembling fingers, revealing a folded legal brief and a handwritten letter on cream stationery. The letter bore only 4 words at the top. "For when they betray." I read it under the desk lamp's flickering light. "My darling girl, if you're reading this, they've made their move. I always knew they would. I feared it would be soon after I was gone. I built Sinclair for you, because you believe in vision, in people, in dignity. But Celeste? She believes in leverage. Tanner and Lila believe in shortcuts. So I created a trust. Quietly, legally sound. You own 51%. Enclosed are the signed papers, notarized and protected through Miles Hartman. He's waiting for your call. But know this. They won't give up easily. You must act fast. Once the ink is dry on any merger, it becomes a different battlefield. Use what I gave you. Not just the shares, but your spine. Love always. Dad." I stared at the letter for a long moment, eyes burning. Then I reached for my phone. Miles Hartman answered on the 3rd ring. His voice was smooth, low, precise, like a scalpel. "Avery," he said, unsurprised. "I was expecting you." "You knew?" I breathed. "About the trust?" "I drafted it," he said simply. "Your father made me promise not to bring it up unless you reached out first. His exact words were, 'She'll know when it's time.' I have it here. The papers, his letter, then it's time." I glanced at the clock again. Midnight. The merger could be finalized by end of business tomorrow, if they accelerated the process. "How binding is this?" I asked. "Can they override it?" "You have legal majority," he said. "But you need to act before they file restructuring documents. Once Langston's name is on the registry and new bylaws are submitted, even a majority stake becomes diluted. On paper, you'll still be an owner, but without teeth." My grip tightened around the letter. "How long do I have?" 24 hours, 48 at most. After that, it gets complicated." I hung up and stood, the letter still clutched in one hand, the legal document in the other. Outside the study window, the sky had shifted from black to slate. A dull gray dawn pushed against the horizon, soft and sharp all at once. I stared out at the waking city, at the skyline my father had once dreamed of carving his name into. "They wanted a war?" I whispered, breath fogging the glass. "Now they'll see who's really in charge." They thought I'd disappear quietly. Instead, I walked in holding the kill switch. The double doors of the Sinclair boardroom opened with a low, reverberating click, the kind that echoed more in memory than in sound. Leather chairs circled a polished obsidian table. Behind the glass walls, the skyline of Boston rose like a wall of judgment. I stepped inside, heels sharp against the marble, a flash drive warm in my palm. They were all already there. Celeste sat at the head of the table, draped in one of her ivory silk blouses. Cool, commanding, her smile precise and unreadable. Tanner lounged with performative ease, one ankle crossed over the other, while Lila's fingers danced across her phone, her expression flickering between smugness and something tighter. Victor Langston stood by the far window, arms folded, perfectly still. The only seat empty was mine. I took it. Celeste didn't blink. Avery, I wasn't aware you'd RSVP'd. I didn't, I replied, placing the flash drive before me like a weapon. But considering the subject of today's vote, I thought I'd make time. Victor spoke first. Is there an issue with protocol? Only if someone intends to proceed without the actual majority shareholder, I said, my voice even. I reached into my bag and retrieved the folder. Pristine, notarized, irrefutable. I own 51% of Sinclair Innovations. It was my father's final decision, and this is the legal trust to prove it. The room shifted. Not a sound, but a collective drawing in of breath. Celeste's lips twitched, just slightly. Tanner laughed. Come on. A trust? From where? Under a mattress? From my father's study, I said. He left it for when you came for the company. And you did. Harrison, seated to my left, opened his briefcase and pulled out a stack of documents. For transparency, he said, distributing copies of the merger agreement. Highlighted in yellow are clauses that directly benefit board members without full disclosure, namely Celeste Quinn, Lila Quinn, and Tanner Quinn. Tanner paled. I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation, Celeste began, voice taut. This isn't, before anyone explains, I cut in, I'd suggest you all watch something first. I stood and crossed to the media hub. The USB clicked into place with a sterile chime. The screen behind me glowed to life. The room darkened. My father appeared, seated in the very chair where Celeste now sat, the Sinclair crest glinting behind him. He looked older than I remembered, but strong, grounded. His voice was calm. If you're seeing this, then I'm gone. And someone is trying to rewrite the future of Sinclair. Let me be clear. Avery is the successor. She knows what this company stands for. She built it with me in ways the rest of you never saw. Celeste was my wife, yes, but she does not have my trust. Neither do Tanner or Lila. Their ambitions are not aligned with Sinclair's legacy. I created a legal trust granting Avery majority ownership. This is not up for debate. You may challenge it in court, but you'll lose. And to those who enabled this, you were never invisible to me. I built Sinclair with my daughter, and if you push her out, you will lose more than a board seat. The video ended. The screen faded to black. Silence followed. Not awkward, not uncertain, but cold, crystalline silence. No one moved. I returned to my seat, slow, deliberate. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I simply met each of their eyes. Celeste, Tanner, Lila, even Victor, and waited. It was Victor who broke first. He leaned forward, voice smooth but glacial. Langston Corp does not do business with liars. He stood and straightened his cufflinks, as if wiping their name off his record. I'll have my office send notice by noon, he added, and walked out. The door hissed shut behind him. For a moment, Celeste said nothing. But I saw it. The microfractures forming beneath the surface. The board members, once complicit, now shifting in their seats. Eyes flicked toward me with something close to deference. The tide had turned. Not with fury, not with spectacle, with certainty. No one moved. The man they robbed had just spoken from the grave and tortured their plans. The echo of my father's voice still lingered in the air, though the video had stopped minutes ago. The screen had gone black, The lights returned to full, and yet the room remained frozen, like a crime scene right after the sirens, but before the cleanup. I didn't move either. My fingers rested gently on the folder in front of me. The printed trust papers fanned out like a deck of cards. Across the table, Celeste stared straight ahead, as if blinking would crack the porcelain veneer she had worn for years. But even her perfect posture couldn't hold back the tremor in her jaw. Victor Langston had already walked out, and with him, the merger. Now came the collapse. "What's happening here?" one of the board members finally asked. "Reynolds, I think. Head of product." His voice carried more bewilderment than allegiance. "Is the trust legally binding?" Miles Hartman, who had entered the room just moments before the video played, stood now with serene authority. "It is," he said, producing a bound copy of the Sinclair Trust Agreement. "Filed, notarized, recorded. Avery Sinclair holds 51% voting power as of March 2023. Any attempt to exclude her was not only unethical, it may be prosecutable." Another board member muttered something under her breath. Tanner flinched. "I'm going to read something," I said, steady now. "Something you all deserve to hear." I pulled up a printout, emails between Celeste and Victor Langston, obtained from a non-company server. Sienna had slipped them to me that morning. I had triple-checked their authenticity. Now I unfolded the paper and began. From Celeste Quinn at privatehost.net to V. Langston at langstoncorp.com. Date, September 28, 2023. Once we finalize the asset merge, I want all Sinclair-branded holdings funneled through Langston proxy accounts. Let Avery fight a ghost if she resurfaces. A hush spread like fog. Celeste's eyes flicked to me for the first time. "That's out of context," she said, voice brittle. "We were negotiating in hypotheticals." "I have 10 more pages," I said softly, each more damning than the last. Victor's exit had been graceful, strategic. But this was something else. This was rot being pulled from the walls. Tanner stood abruptly. "This is a circus," he spat. "She doesn't know how to run this place. We made it profitable. We scaled up production. She was just her dad's emotional support." He shoved his chair, hard. "You all gonna let her walk in here and burn it down?" No one answered him. He stormed out, the glass door rattling in his wake. Lila sat frozen. Her face was drained of its usual performative sharpness. Mascara smudged slightly under one eye. Her voice, when it came, was barely above a whisper. "You were always going to be the one," she said, not looking at anyone. "Weren't you?" I said nothing. Miles spoke again. "I would advise the board to take immediate steps to freeze all merger-related activity and launch a review of executive conduct over the past 6 months. Ms. Sinclair is also within her rights to call for an audit." I nodded. "That's exactly what I'm doing. Starting now." Celeste's breath caught. Just once. She stood, slow and deliberate, smoothing down the front of her blazer. "Then I'll save you the drama." She reached into her handbag and pulled out a typed, signed letter. She placed it in front of Harrison, the acting secretary. "My resignation," she said simply. "Effective immediately." Then, without another word, she walked out. No breakdown, no theatrics. Just quiet retreat. The board didn't applaud. This wasn't a movie. But I could feel it. The balance shifting. The gravity in the room now bent around me. After the meeting dissolved, people filtered out quickly. Some gave me nods, others avoided eye contact. Only Sienna lingered near the door, arms crossed. She gave me a small nod, not deferential, but respectful. The kind that meant something. I remained seated until the room was nearly empty. Only Lila remained. She stood slowly, walked toward me, not with her usual strut, but a hesitant, almost childlike pace. Her hands fidgeted with the hem of her sleeve. "Can I talk to you?" she asked quietly. "Not as your enemy?" They say revenge feels sweet, but when I looked into Lila's eyes, I tasted something bitter. The office had been mine for months now, Yet today it finally felt settled. The cold gray palette was replaced with soft earth tones, curated art from local Boston talents, and my father's antique clock, restored, ticking steadily in the corner. Across from my desk, Lila stood with her chin slightly lifted, defiant even in defeat. I had called her in one last time, not to punish, not to scold, but to offer something most people in her position never receive: a choice. "You can stay," I told her, "under strict oversight. No more side channels, no more whispered agendas. You'll earn your place every day. Or you can walk out with dignity." She didn't blink, just pressed her lips together, then nodded. "I'll go," she said. I passed her the exit paperwork. "You'll find your severance is generous. You did work hard once, before everything got personal." Still silent, Lila took the envelope, turned, and left without another word. Only after the door shut did I see it. A single folded note tucked beneath the pen she left behind. "Thank you for not becoming what they were." I held it for a long time. In the weeks that followed, we swept out the rot. Sienna took over as Chief Strategy Officer. Harrison stayed on as CFO, but with a clear mandate: transparency, top to bottom. Together, we built a new branch, the Sinclair Ethics and Innovation Council. Half our board turned over within 3 months. We didn't just win, we transformed. Not overnight. Some changes met resistance, especially from those used to backdoor deals and whisper campaigns. But culture, once poisoned, doesn't heal with grand speeches. It mends with action, consistency, and time. I opened the doors to internships for underserved communities. We audited every executive hire of the past 2 years. We even had staff-led review panels. A radical idea, and yet it worked. Every Friday, I stood before the team, not as a ghost of Graham Sinclair, but as Avery. A year passed faster than I could have imagined. The skyline glowed behind the hotel ballroom's tall windows. I stood in a navy blue suit, tailored, elegant, but practical. No jewelry save for one piece, a silver locket, warm against my skin. Inside, my father's photo, and the words he once scribbled on a sticky note that now lived in my wallet: "Build something better, even if it breaks you first." They called my name. The crowd applauded as I crossed the stage to accept the Legacy of Innovation Award. Not for record profits or sleek products, but for rebuilding a company with heart. I thanked the audience, smiled when the lights were too bright, and kept my words brief. Later, I slipped away to the rooftop terrace. The Boston wind was cool, dusk settling in layers of lavender and charcoal. I opened the locket. "We did it," I whispered. "Not just the company, but the way you dreamed it should be." No reply came, of course, only the faint sound of the antique clock, still ticking. Inside, the event was winding down. I made my way toward the exit when a young intern intercepted me. Barely 20, eyes full of awe. "Ms. Sinclair," she said, clutching a mock portfolio, "how did you survive all of that?" I paused. So many answers danced on my tongue: lawyers, allies, timing. But none of them were the truth. I smiled. Because they forgot who they were dealing with. Betrayal may have stolen her foundation, but it couldn't shake her resolve. Avery rebuilt not just a company, but a legacy. Brick by honest brick, truth by undeniable truth. When injustice is met with unwavering courage, the final verdict can echo through a lifetime. No wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth. Like, share, and subscribe if this story moved you. Comment 1 if you felt her fight was yours too.